good afternoon, and welcome. My name is Amy Apostolaris, and I'm the CEO at DFNet. While I am relatively new to DFNet, a little over 7 months, I just want to give you a sense of my background and why I'm very excited about leading DFNet and what we're about to present to you today. My history stems all the way back for about 30 years in epidemiology as well as in R&D at Pfizer, and continuing into commercial and clinical research at various contract research organizations and academia. My most recent experience has been with technology, decentralized trials, and embracing the importance of patient engagement and site engagement to enable clinical trials to be more effective and to improve outcomes. So very excited to be opening up our DFdiscover 2025 release highlights, smarter workflows, and enhanced ePRO. Thank you again for joining us. Today, we'll give you a practical look on how DFdiscover 5.10 and DFengage 2.4 strengthen everyday study operations, bringing more efficient workflows for sites, a better experience for participants, and tighter security and governance across the platform. As an aside, as we move forward into the presentation with Laura, and Laura, as many of you already know, is our product manager. She has been very instrumental in the development and guidance of our platforms, and she will be presenting on those shortly. But as a couple of housekeeping points, if you have any questions, please use the Teams chat at any time for questions. We'll also save time for some live Q&A at the end of the presentation. And of course, if you can't stay for the full session, a recording will be sent to all registrants after the event. But let's start with a quick suite overview on how our modular eClinical ecosystem helps you assemble exactly what each protocol needs. And then Laura will walk through the new features and a short demo. Now, on this slide that you're seeing, what I'm capturing here is how we support complex studies. And we know that studies are getting not only more complicated, but more difficult and challenging. But with a modular eClinical suite, with our DFdiscover platform, which is an integrated modular eClinical ecosystem, it is designed specifically to handle the complexities of modern trials, decentralized trials, complex rare diseases, observational studies, and of course, all the global challenges that go along with that. Rather than stitching together disparate tools, as I have seen many trials dealing with, you can configure exactly what each protocol needs in one platform. eConsent, IRT, payments, drug supply and inventory, and eTMF, all orchestrated around DFdiscover EDC and the ePRO Foundation. Now, for participants, we are focusing even more on patient engagement by enhancing DFengage even further to provide guided assessments and patient diaries and real-time notifications across web and mobile applications to improve adherence and data quality. On the site and sponsor side, you get coordinated workflows and data flowing through one ecosystem with API-level interoperability to connect CTMS, safety, labs, and even electronic health records, as we plan to do in the future. In short, our modular eClinical system, our eClinical suite, adapts to the study. It can scale globally and reduce operational burden. For the rest of the presentation, Laura will show how DFWeb and DFengage bring all of these capabilities to life, and she will highlight the new release features that I've presented here on this slide. I'll stop there, and on behalf of the entire DFNet team, I sincerely thank you for being here and for being our customer for so many years and for the work you do. Now let's dive in. Laura?
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us in mid-December on a Friday. We're glad you're here and really excited to talk about the DFdiscover 5.10 and DFengage 2.4 release. We put them together out at the same time. And in the past, we've had them as separate releases, but we really wanted to bundle everything together so that there's a lot included in this release, as you hear today. So here's a high-level look at some of the new features and improvements in these two releases. So we've really focused, as Amy mentioned, the importance of the patient in clinical research. We really focused our updates on DFengage and supporting ePRO from the participant perspective, but also from the site perspective. But we've also made a lot of enhancements to the EDC capabilities in DFdiscover, as well as several other updates from sort of the back-end setup security perspective as well. So why have we really focused on DFengage? And it's really important, as we all know, that patients are really the heart of the research. And engaging with patients is really going to lead to better data quality, improved adherence to the protocol, and also more meaningful outcomes. And so we're not just looking for patients to participate, show up to those clinic visits. We really want to engage them in the actual study design, making sure that the research is relevant to them and ensure that patients are feeling trust and engagement with the research that they're a part of. And so that we're really, with our research, addressing the real world needs, accelerating innovation, and improving health equity across the world. And technology has a lot of tools available for it to help alleviate a lot of the work that patients need to do to make these clinical trials happen. Everyone here on this call, you're all essential to making clinical trials happen, but the patient is doing so much of that work as well. And so we want to see how we can use technology to make sure that patients are able and have the capability to contribute to research wherever they are in the world, even if they're not, coming into clinic visits all the time with the actual site staff, but even when they're not within the site team, within the clinics. So DFengage has a lot of different features, and this is one of our newer applications in the DFdiscover family. And so I know some of you are very familiar with it and are using it a lot, and others haven't really seen it or haven't used it yet. So it's designed as an app that's easy to use for research participants. And so it's designed so that you can collect, a variety of data depending on what the research is looking for. So whether that's symptoms, daily outcomes, questionnaires, diaries, or surveys, patients enter that data on their own device. Typically it's bring your own device, but we can use it in a provision scenario, and it allows them to enter that data in their language of choice. So we support multi-language, and it supports online and offline as well, so that even if their participants are on the go or they're in a place where they don't have a steady internet connection, they can still capture that data on the mobile app according to the protocol requirements. And once that data is completed and submitted by the patient, it's available in real time to the study team through the DFdiscover EDC tools. And DFengage is a mobile app, but is also now a web app as well with the 2.4 release. And it's fully integrated with the DFdiscover platform. So it's the same setup definition, the same user accounts and role permissions that are used in DFdiscover today also are used within the DFengage platform. So it's really just an add-on to all of the existing functionality to really bring the patient into the research. So one of the big changes we have in 2.4 is that DFengage is a whole web app now. So in addition to being available through the app stores as a mobile application for smartphones and for tablets, it's also available on the web as well. And so we have a hosted version at dfengage.dfdiscover.com, but for those of you who are hosting your own DFdiscover instances, you can host your own DFWeb or DFengage as well, just like you do with you can do with DFWeb. And there's a lot of different features that we've added to DFdiscover to enable this, including support for different access and invitation links to simplify access to the application. And some of the there are some key differences between web versus mobile, which I'll get to in a bit, but this really allows participants those who in projects or for participants who don't want to have to install a mobile app on their phone, this gives them access to the same functionality without having to install anything. So you might be wondering why, when the web version of DFengage would make sense versus the mobile application. And we built the mobile application first because we do a lot of work in lower middle income countries where internet connection is not guaranteed. And so we really wanted to design an application that could work regardless of internet connection. And so the mobile application is still great in those scenarios, but it's also really great if the participants are filling out activities very frequently. So if they're filling out daily questionnaires or multiple questionnaires per day, having that mobile app is really helpful because they'll receive the push notifications when they get new activities available. And so they'll get those prompts just on their device to fill out those activities and also when they're overdue, which helps them keep more engaged than if they're getting emails with links to the web app. The mobile app also allows simpler access with a PIN login. So with the web app, you need to log in with a password, but with the mobile application, they just need to enter a PIN. So it still keeps the app secure on their device, but they don't need to enter their password every time. So the web makes a lot of sense in some projects, but sometimes mobile is best. So it really just depends on a project by project basis and even a participant by participant basis. So the participant themselves can decide which of the two versions they'd like to use. We keep it very flexible in that way. This slide outlines all of the different features and the differences between mobile and web apps. I'm not going to give you go into all of the detail here, but just as a reference that I think is really helpful to understand what the differences are between and the strengths of each. And something else that we've added in 2.4 is we really updated the ePRO login process for participants to really streamline and simplify. So for those of you who are familiar with the existing 2.3 version of DFengage, there's 4 different fields that you have to fill out on the login page. So the participant has a number of different fields that they need to fill out. And so we set ourselves a challenge and we have just one field that the participants need to fill out now to log in. So we have that available now through an invite link as well as a login link that predefine all the information that the participants need. So they just need to provide their password when they log in. And we've also added support for both two-factor authentication. So they provide a verification code they receive by email before they log in. And we also now support forgot password. So this is a look at what the onboarding flow looks like with these new features available in DFengage and as well as in DF Web. I'm going to talk more about the site-facing features that we've added to DF Web to support ePRO. And we've designed the onboarding flow to support both in-person setup with the participants. So if the participant's on site with the clinic staff, that the clinic staff can work directly with the participant to help them get them set up. But you can also have it works very well also in remote settings. So if the participant's getting enrolled remotely, they're not in person with any of the site staff or any clinic staff, they can get all the invitations by email and get all set up by email. And so basically it starts with the site registering the participant with their email address or providing a link or the QR code to the participant. The participant either receives the email or they click the link or they scan the QR code to open up DFengage, whether on the mobile app or on the web. And then they confirm their email address. And that's an important step to make sure that we've got the right person, we have the right email address before they get logged into DFengage. And so they'll receive a password reset email once they've confirmed their address, and clicking that link will bring them into the app again to set their new password. And then once that password is set, if two-factor authentication is enabled, they'll need to enter their verification code, but then they'll be logged right into DFengage. And so it helps ensure that when the participant is being invited, that we have their correct email address in the system and that they're logged in and can be logged in as easily as possible. One of the other differences between the mobile app and the web app is that with the mobile app, you can send push notifications. On the web, that's not as straightforward. And so instead, we now have email-based reminders for participants. And these are the same types of reminders that participants see in the mobile application, but we can actually customize them now. So we provide templates where you can customize what that email will look like for the participant, and it can be sent on the same schedule as the mobile applications. It still follows the same visit scheduling schema that's defined for the mobile app right now, but it's actually sent as scheduled by a system administrator. So there's a program that will be set up to get those email reminders sent out by email to participants. She'll talk a little bit more about that setup later on. And here's a look at what the forgot password process looks like. So previously with the app, we didn't have a place to store the participant's email address. You can't have participant email addresses sitting around in DFadmin for study administrators to see. And so we didn't have a place to capture that information, but we've made a lot of updates within DFadmin as well as on the back end and on the server side to make sure that we can capture the email address and other participant details very securely and keep that secure and private for those participants. So now we can, with that foundation in place, we can now support forgot password. And so there's, similar to what you have in DF Web and DF Collect, there's a forgot password option. They confirm their email address. They'll receive an email to their email address, and then they'll receive instructions to set up their new password and then log them in, very similar to the initial onboarding process. So those are sort of the patient-facing DFengage features that we've added, but we've also added a great new page called the ePRO management page in DF Web that is designed for sites as well as monitors and for study teams to get insight into what's happening with the ePRO data and with the participants, as well as help register the participants, but also support the participants as they're using DFengage from the site perspective. And so we have 3 different access levels to this ePRO management page. So the admin level has full access. So they're registering participants, they're entering their PII in the system, they're sending emails to the participant, and they're viewing all the information and logs and the audit trail with the participant's information. And then we have a monitor access, which allows view access to that information, and they can see the PII, but they can't send any emails. They're not making any changes to the user's profile or anything like that. And then finally, we have the third type, which is the viewer type, which is people like us who cannot have access to PII. We can still see the status of the participants. We can still see when data was last submitted by the participant, but we can't see any of their personal information. So it still allows us to see what's going on with the ePRO, see what's happening with the participants' access and their use of the application, but not give them any access to their name, their email address, any of their personal information. And while we're now allowing the site staff to record that information within DF Web, all of that data is encrypted on the server side and is not accessible in DFadmin to study administrators. So we've designed it very carefully to ensure the privacy of participant information. So I wanted to mention some of the sort of the behind the scenes. So for those of you who are administrators and doing the database setup, these are some of the important steps that you'll need to consider as you're setting up specific studies to enable DFengage, as well as setting up your server to work with DFengage as well. So there are some configuration files on the back end that need to be customized, and a user account that needs to be enabled with specific permissions. I'll show you what it looks like to some options that we've added to customize the ePRO registration process within DF Setup. The customization process for email templates. I'll show you in DFadmin what the new ePRO user account looks like, because we've hidden all that information about study participants. And then also show you the new role permissions in DFadmin for ePRO administration for that new ePRO management page in DF Web. And there's lots more details about this that I'm not going to get into in the webinar today. Pardon me. So there's lots more information, and for those of you who want to dive in deeper with us and are looking for more information, we're happy to schedule further calls to dive into this with you. So next, I'm going to go into a demo to kind of show you what things look like in DFadmin and DF Setup, DF Web, and the new features in DFengage. So let me move on to my other screen, and I'm going to have to try really hard not to click I have a end event button in my corner. I'm going to try really hard not to click that one while I move my screen around. So let me just share my other screen. Okay, so I'm going to start off in DFadmin. So what we're seeing on my screen now is I'm in DFadmin, I'm in the users section of DFadmin, and this is the account that I'm going to use for the demo in DF Web. And so I have this user selected. I have access to, I'm going to be using study 806. And so I have access just to site 905. And so that's under my regular study permissions, but we have a new tab, ePRO admin permissions. And so that's the new section where we're defining those 3 levels of access to the DF web ePRO management feature. So there's admin, monitor, and viewer. For the demo, I'm just going to show you admin at site 905. And so I have that special permission. It's defined at the user level, not the role level. So it's specific to that user. But you can, define multiple roles for a specific user. I could be admin for multiple sites. I could be a viewer for multiple sites. So, many of you on the call would have viewer access rather than the monitor or the admin access, so that the viewer access prevents you from having access to any of the patient information. So that's the ePRO admin side of the permissions available in DFadmin. But I'm going to show you now what it looks like for the user accounts. So this list is a number of user accounts that we've created for study 806 for site 901. And we've got some patients down here for also 903, 905. So we've just defined a sort of a standard schema for the usernames for the participants. So the participant usernames don't have any actual patient information in it, unlike our normal user accounts. And so these permissions are just assigned to one singular subject. So we have a specific role for ePRO called ePRO data, and you just get access to that. These accounts just get access to that one subject. And then the important thing is that none of this user profile information is accessible. So I don't have any information about any of these accounts in terms of the user profile other than what permissions they've been assigned. And we'll be looking at, site 905. And so there's a few subjects that you'll see when we go into DFengage that have been registered, have had their user profile updated, but the history doesn't have any of that information. So you can see that I originally created that user, granted them access to the ePRO role for the specific subject ID. And I can see that, the patient was sent to active. We've got a time zone for them and we've got a language for them, but I don't see any of their other user profile, even though their email address and their name is in the system, but it's all protected from the admin side. So that's the DFadmin piece. The other piece I'll talk about here is just there's the option in DFadmin to add bulk users. So this is how we add the ePRO type users. So you're adding the accounts for ePRO participants all in advance so that they're available to the site staff within DFWeb. So the site staff themselves aren't creating those accounts. Those accounts are pre-created and then they're available for the sites to get them activated with the registration process. Okay, so that's DFadmin, and then I'm going to pop over now to DF setup just to show you the new option we have now in the global settings. So if we go into study global settings, we have a new tab on the global settings dialog for the ePRO registration settings. And so this lets you define which fields you want to include on the registration page. So let's say that you don't want to collect the participant's name in the database, but you just want to have the email address. That's it. And so you can actually just uncheck these specific components of the registration, and then that will customize with the dialog that the site staff sees. If all the participants are in the same time zone as a site, you probably don't need to collect time zone. The time zone will be auto-saved according to the person who's registered them. And right now we're not using their phone number for anything, but we're in the midst of adding SMS support so that we can send text messages to participants as well. Two of the things we'll see on the registration page are 2 verification checks. And so these are just some extra checks to help make sure that the site is really confirming that like the name and the email address for this participant and the subject ID are really the right person, and that just to verify that they are consented and they are eligible to participate and start using DFengage. The other option we have here is a setting to decide whether or not to send the invitation all the time, never send the invitation, or send it on demand, set it on demand. So this gives a default to the site so that they don't have to choose whether to send the invitation every time. You can actually predefine that for everyone in this study. So that lets you customize the registration workflow for your study according to, are they remote? Are they always going to be in person? What makes the most sense for the project's needs? So that's the update in DF setup around the ePRO settings. And then I'm going to move on now to my logged out DF web session. Of course, I got logged out while I was presenting. So I'm going to log in as that demo user I showed you earlier. And so this is the account that has ePRO admin permissions in DF web. And I'm going to resume my previous session. So I just have access to the one site. And so I can see I've got 8 subjects in my site. I've got 142 CRFs here on the dashboard. And I'm going to pop over to this new option we have in the sidebar in DF web called ePRO. And so this gives me the listing of the participants. And this listing is according to the user accounts that have been created in DF admin. So I've got 20 total subjects or user accounts, I should say, that are available, and 4 have been registered so far. So you can see there's these 4 accounts that have a status that's not inactive. And this first one has been disabled. This first one's an example of a screening, a screen failure that they're not going to use the ePRO because they weren't actually enrolled. And then these 4 are the ones that are in progress. So the statuses we see here are lined up with what the participants will see in DFengage, with overdue activities, activities that are available now to complete, upcoming activities that are something's available in the future, or if they're completed, they'll show up as green. And so we have these filters up at the top too, so that, as we have more and more patients in the study, you can just filter to that list of the ones you want to review. And just to pull up the information about individual subjects. So this gives you just a summary of, the user profile information, as well as, the dates and times and the attribution of when the invites were sent, when they were registered, when the patient last logged in, and when they last synced data. You can also view the invitation that was previously sent. There's also options to support the login. So if the participant didn't get their invitation email or lost it, you could resend that. And then you can also send the login link, which is different than the invitation. The invitation, which I'll show you in a bit, is where they confirm their email address and then set a new password. With a login link, that just takes them right to the login page and they can enter their password. And then we also provide a way with just an area to copy links or scan the QR code, either for use directly in clinic with the participant or to send it through some other means other than email through DF web. So we're providing a few different tools for the sites to help support participants as that level 1 support for patients, and help make sure the sites have the tools that they need to help get that access. And we also have a couple different logs here. So this first log, ePRO account log, is the history of changes to the user profile. So you can see when the participant was registered, as well as any changes to it. So you can see the patient was initially registered under the incorrect name of B-Demo, and the name was later changed to Laura Demo, and then finally to Laura Joldersma. So you can see the full traceability, pardon me, of who made what changes. Pardon me. And then the other log that we have available is the access log. And so this is really helpful because you can actually see the participant's activity. And this log has no personal information in it. It just shows the username, and it shows their login and logout events, as well as when they started and when they submitted activities. So you can see all the different activities that this user has completed and submitted over time. So it gives you insight into what's happening on the participant side, in addition to what conversations the sites are having directly with the participants. So it can be really helpful with troubleshooting and follow-up. And so so let's actually go into the registration process. So this view data link takes us just right directly into the subject binder for the participant. And so I've got some data entered for this participant, and I'm going to go ahead and enter, my day 1 visit, that this is going to be the baseline for my ePRO activities. So I'm just going to save this one, and we can see in the binder, I'm going to leave the rest of the forms incomplete for now, but we can see we have a day 1 diary visit here with a few different forms to be completed, a repeating form. So these are the activities that will show up for the participant in DFengage, but of course are also available from the site perspective in DF web, as well as DF Explore. So if we go back into ePRO, I'm going to go ahead and register 905007. And so I'm going to put in my own name again. We've got participants with duplicate names. I'm going to use my DFdiscover demo Gmail address so I can show you the invites. And so I've kept the language and the time zone fields in my registration, but these can be disabled. If your study only uses English, you only need English. But if you have multiple study languages, this makes sure that when they get the invitation email, when they get the reminder emails, they're getting it in the correct language. Your templates we support multi-language for the templates as well. And we have a step here where you have to confirm the subject ID or the subject alias. And then we have the option to send the invite, and you can preview the invite to just confirm what it's going to send to the participant before it gets sent. And I'm going to verify that the person's correct, and I'm going to verify that they are eligible and have provided consent. So when I click register, that sends out that email address or the email to the participant, and it also just confirms that they're registered. So a patient can be registered without having an invite email sent, but they need to be registered in order for the invite email to be sent. So because I've got that baseline date entered on the EDC side, I have activities that are due now because my schedule is set up so that activities are due on day 1. So now I'm going to move on to the participant side, and I'm going to click on my inbox where I should be receiving my invitation. And there it is now. Let me reset it. There we go. So this is my invitation email. I could just click this link. And this is a link that doesn't expire. So if you send it to the participant and they don't get to it a while, they can still use it after the fact. And this is actually a URL you could construct yourself if you wanted. But this just lets them go in. And in order to let them set their password, we need them to confirm their email address first. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I've got my email over my password reset email now again in my email. And then I can click that one to open it up, and this lets me set my new password. I'm going to go set my password. I need to make sure I remember it because I'm going to need to use it for every time I log in on the web. If I'm on the mobile app, I just have to enter the password, and then I can set my PIN, and then I just use my PIN to log in. And so once I set that new password, I'm getting logged in. And the first thing I see in DFengage, both on the web version and in the mobile app, is a training module. And so this takes them through all of the different steps on completing activity, how to fill out the different types of questions that they'll see in the application. And this is just generic. It's just talking about the different types of information like date and time and numbers and text and multiple and single choice. But it gives them a nice baseline to understand, how to use the application, make sure they're comfortable with filling out the activities and using the app. This is mostly the same between the mobile version and the web version. There are some differences between the two since mobile doesn't support offline or the PIN, so we've removed those pieces. So we take them through each of these modules, and then once they're completed the training section, they're brought into the Today page. And so this is where they see the list of activities that are available to them. And so we have a training activity. We've got a morning and evening diary due today. And then we also have an episode reporting. And so I'm going to go through the training activity just as an example to start off with. And we've made some updates in recent versions of DFengage where you can just include instruction screens. You can always, add an HTML formatting to, highlight specific pieces of the information to help highlight information you want the participant to know. You can also include phone numbers directly in the activities as well. So you could actually, once you include the phone number as a link in there, they can actually just click that on their phones if they're on their phone, as opposed to on a laptop or computer, and that will dial that number. So this activity just kind of prompts them to practice doing the data entry. So there's a date entry, a time entry, which always just defaults to the current date and time on my device. I have just practice selecting a response, selecting a number on a scale, and then entering a number. So this is an example where we have, they need to enter a number between 1 and 100. I can enter 999, and it gives me an error that it might be outside of what we're expecting to see. And so if I change that to 98, that warning goes away. And so this is just a final confirmation page. So when you have fields that are required in DFengage, those have a red asterisk in the prompt, and then you can't actually hit the next or the finish button until that response is provided. So they need to confirm that their training is completed and then click that finish button. And when they click finish, they're prompted to confirm that they're ready to submit their responses, because once they submit, they can't change that data anymore. And so we want to make sure that they're double checking that they're really ready to send it over. So our training activity is completed. And so I can see that activity, the ones that I've completed today are shown on my today page. And then I also have the history shows me the activities I've completed in the past. So as I complete activities over time, I'll see them all in this history view. And we have the a view button here. So I can actually see the responses that I provided to other activities. So that's just a quick look at the DFengage piece. And I'm going to move over back to DFweb. And I've been logged out again. Gotta set my logout timer better next time. So going back into so let's look at the patient data now. So we can actually see our day 1 diary, our training activities have been completed. And then if we go over to the ePRO page, we can see that, yep, here I'm registered, and you can see when the data was last synced just now. This is a UTC 0, so it's a little ahead of the current time here in Hamilton. And you can also see in the ePRO access log that I logged in, I started the activity, and then I submitted that activity. And then the start activity is viewing that training activity that I completed. So that's the DFengage piece. So let me come back to the slides and just tell you about a few other changes that we have in DFdiscover. All right, coming back to the slides. So some additional updates that we have added to the various products within DFdiscover. So we've added a field navigation taskbar for both DFcollect and DFweb. And this is really to enable easier navigation for users on touch screens. So this is an option that you enable within DF Setup in the global settings, and it adds a previous and next button to the bottom of the interface. And that just will the user can tap that button instead of having to click manually through the fields to navigate throughout. And this really helps with forms that have skip logic or have field visibility, fields that show and hide dynamically. This helps make sure that the user can just click on the next, similar to what we were seeing in DFengage, and they don't need to manually click into fields themselves. And there's an additional setting. By default, this is in DFweb. It's only available on tablet and smartphone screen sizes, but there's an additional setting in the user settings for DFweb to show that up for desktop screen sizes as well. Another update to both DFweb and DFcollect is the way we enforce role permissions. So we've updated this to align it with DFexplore. So DFexplore has all those different view options, but we weren't using those for DFcollect and DFweb. So there were a few things that you weren't allowed to do in DFexplore, but you could do in DFweb or DFcollect. So we've aligned all of that so it's consistent. So if you do have any discrepancies between what you want patients to do in DFweb or DFexplore, just make sure you're reviewing those permissions when you upgrade to 5.10 to make sure that everything's working still the way you expect. Another great update that we've added in terms of eCRF design in DF Setup is increasing our character limit. So I've heard from some of you that we don't have enough space to put enough text on the eCRFs. And so what we've done is previously the limit was 256 characters for those field prompts and is now up to 1,500. And so that's supported in DFexplore and DFweb. There are some limitations in DFcollect in terms of how long the field prompts can be for some field types because of the tablet-based display. But this really helps, I think, with those gigantic inclusion and exclusion criteria that we are all very familiar with in our complex protocols, that you just need some extra space to include all the information needed. Another update we've added that's just in DF Explorer for now, but will be coming to DF Web in the future, is a way to simplify the subject binder. So we all know those long list of AEs and medical history pages and ConMeds when you're collecting one per page. And so what this allows you to do is group all of those adverse event visits, those repeating forms, into one folder. And so basically, if you have a long list of AE 1 through, let's hope we don't have 50, let's say 1 through 10 adverse events for a very long study. Let's group them. This option lets you group those within one folder. And so you can kind of see in the screenshot here, what that lets you do is if you're using those page label substitutions, you can actually include information, say the AE term or the AE start date in the page label, and you can actually see that list essentially of AEs right within the subject binder. So I think this will really help with navigation across, across the different forms for site staff as well as for data review. And I'm excited to get that updated into DF Web as well, because I think it really makes the subject binder easier to navigate. The next one is, this is one we've talked about in the past. I know some of you are going to be excited to see that this is available. We now support encryption at rest for specific data fields. So there's a new encrypted field property in DF setup that allows you to define which fields should be encrypted within the database. So it doesn't change anything about how the field looks or what the data, how the data appears on, in the EDC tools on the front end. But what it does is it scrambles that data essentially on the back end to make sure that administrators and people with back end access, they can't see any of that information. So if you're collecting patient identifying information, you want to make sure that that's protected from any unauthorized access. And so that's what this supports here. And so it's only available for certain data types. So we're not going to let you encrypt number fields or choice or check fields. And this does introduce some limitations in terms of how long these characters can be. So if you're encrypting, say, a comments field, that comments field can only be up to 250 characters because the encryption takes up a lot more space when it gets stored in the database. And so it does need to be the actual text that's entered can only be up to a certain limit. In the last release, we added a great new import from Excel feature, and we've now enhanced that with more being able to resolve conflicts when you're importing setups. And so we're not, you can't fully replace existing field properties on existing plates yet, which I know is that's our next step. But what this does is if you're importing plates that have module or style overlaps with what's in your existing database, you can actually select the properties and the fields that you want to keep or replace. And so this allows you to, so I'll show you the difference table. So when conflicts are detected, when you're importing that setup, you can go into that list of conflicts and actually choose whether to keep what's the current value in your setup or to replace it with the import value. So you can go step by step through those to review to make sure you're not overwriting something unintentionally as you're, say, importing new plates. And we've got a few updates that I wanted to flag for administrators that are, those of you who are working on the back end and in DF admin and from the administrator's point of view, I want to make sure you're all aware of these. So one of the big updates is we've updated the API to only support TLS 1.3. So previously we did continue allowing TLS version 1.2, but we've now eliminated that and 1.3 is required. And one of the consequences of that is that DF Collect needs to be on 5.10 when you're connecting to the DFdiscover 5.10 server and API. So that's an important security update. And I've mentioned the role permissions. We have a couple of security updates for DF Web. Just in the interest of time, I just want to flag these for those administrators out there. Make sure you review the release notes and the release highlights that have more details around these updates. And we have a number of other, there's always lots in every DFdiscover release, right? Especially since we haven't had a minor release out in about a year or so. There's always lots that we include there. So these are a few of the additional updates we've made. And please do check out the release notes. And if you're looking for more information about all of the updates, we're happy to follow up with a call to go through those with you. And just the note that we always have about version compatibility, we do always want to support the backwards compatibility. So those using desktop apps, particularly in DFdiscover or DFexplore, don't necessarily need to update right away. But just be aware of what features are and aren't supported as you're updating, say, your backend, but the users aren't updating their DF Explorer version, or if you're upgrading to DF Web or DF Collect or DFengage, the latest version, but not yet updating your backend. So just be aware of those differences. And again, DF Collect 5.9.4 or earlier won't be able to connect to DFdiscover 5.10 once you've upgraded the backend. So I've covered a lot today, and there's lots more that we have included in this release. So make sure you check out the release notes, the release highlight slides. So a lot of the content I showed you today is actually in those slides with lots more detail. So that will be really helpful. With DFengage in particular, we have a really comprehensive training slide deck, so that if you're new to DFengage or you're like exploring it, there's a ton of information in there to really help you, to support you as you're working on implementing DFengage or investigating it. And we also have for DFengage both a user guide for DFengage from a user perspective, so for participants, but we also have a study setup and administration guide. So for those of you on the call who are needing to get your study set up for DFengage, this really goes into how all of that will work. And something else that we've updated with this release is our website. So we now have streamlined the information for each release into 3 different pages. So there's a product updates page that gives you a high-level view of what has actually been updated, both for the major and minor releases as well as patches. The documentation is all now on one page, and the downloads are all on one page. So you can just go straight to that downloads page to get the download for the latest version instead of having to scroll through the accordion list of versions that we had before. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And yeah, definitely, obviously, reach out to the support team if you have any questions or need more information. And happy holidays. And thank you so much again for joining us on a Friday in December. We really appreciate you being here. And thank you for all the applause. I love it. It's silent applause, but it's very satisfying. I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, and well-deserved, Laura, and to the software development team. And thank you all again for joining and partnering with us and being part of this big family. Look forward to continuing to work together. And again, any questions, just come right back to us, and we're all happy to help you out. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.